Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Sam and this is The Lonely Chapter, a show where we speak to interesting people, finding out their stories, finding out what motivates them, whilst also learning from their highs and their lows. Today it is just me. I wanted to share with you some of the books that have had the biggest impacts on my life to date. I hope you find this useful and let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. Thank you for listening. This one was made for your enjoyment. I just want to start today, as I have done previously in a solo episode, just by thanking you, the listener. This is episode 19, which is crazy. It's flown by. It's been a few months now. And I'm enjoying it. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. If you are, please do share the show and any episodes that you really do enjoy with someone who may enjoy them as well to the same level. And if you could rate the show, if you haven't already, whether that's on Apple or Spotify, and keep engaging on social media, that really helps as well. So in today's episode, I wanted to look at 5 books that have really had a big impact on me. I say changed my life, which some of them have, but they've definitely all had massive impacts on aspects of my life. And hopefully today I'll be able to explain to you what those are, delve into the books and what they're about. And if you've not read them already, maybe this will be the moment where you decide to pick one of these up and have a listen. If so, do let me know, and I look forward to hearing what you thought of it as well. So getting into it, at number 1 is Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. This is a book that I read around the start of my journey into sort of self-help and deciding to change the path of my life, essentially. And I'd come across Jordan Peterson on social media, mainly YouTube, seeing some of his lectures. He spoke a lot about how people can find purpose and meaning in life and how they can get there. And it was a lot of practical takeaways as well, which I found really useful. He has been in the news for other reasons, and he speaks about some controversial topics. And more recently, he's gone into religious centered things, which isn't necessarily my cup of tea, but it's interesting to hear what he has to say as well. I've seen him live 3 times, twice in London and also once in Cyprus. So it's safe to say that I am a fan of his work and I do enjoy listening to him talk. So the 12 rules are pretty straightforward rules that you can take away and use in your own life. I found it really insightful and really effective in my own life, implementing these rules, and I still do use a lot of them. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through them all and just give a little insight into each one, and then we'll move on. So rule number 1 is stand up straight with your shoulders back. This is a postural change that you can make. And he talks about lobsters in the book, and you may have seen the memes about lobsters and Jordan Peterson. But he speaks about the way in society that the way you present yourself, the way you stand and walk into a room can say a lot about you off the bat. So just by standing up straight with your shoulders back, a nice tall posture, chest out, can give the air of confidence. And you may not be feeling confident, but just by doing that, you can tell people who you are without even saying a word. So it's one that I've definitely worked on, and most people who know me will always tell me that my posture is very good, but it's something that I really do try and focus on and take a bit of interest in for that reason and for other reasons, obviously. Number 2 is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. This is one that I use to quote to people a lot still. So the idea is that you look after yourself, and by doing so, you can then look after others. A lot of the time, we put others before us, and our own health or well-being suffers. The example he uses in the book, and this is the one that I say to people all the time, it still sticks with me, is that if your pet had life-saving medication, you as the owner would make sure that they are getting that medication on the hour, on the minute, whenever the doctor told you that it needed to go. As soon as that's your medication, for some reason, you don't follow it as strictly, and maybe they give you a course of antibiotics for 14 days, and you get to day 10, you start to feel much better, everything goes away. So you don't see out the course or whatever it is. And it's fascinating to me that if that was someone you were looking after, someone you cared for, obviously he says pet, but it could be a loved one, you would make sure they got it. The other aspect of this that I see very commonly in current life is with mental health, and people give really good advice to other people who are struggling. They listen and they guide them down the right path. As soon as it's them who needs the help, they don't listen to their own advice and they go against everything that they've been saying. And it's the same thing. You're putting someone else and making sure that they're okay. But as soon as it's you, you forget everything that you've done. And yeah, it can really push you back. Number 3 is make friends with people who want the best for you. So different people have different effects on you. Some people will bring you up and some people will bring you down. People who surround you are going to have those effects. So surround yourself with people who are going to bring you up and who want the best for you. It's quite a straightforward one, but again, something that we can think about actively when we're choosing who to have around us. Number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So again, comparison is the thief of joy. That's the famous quote. And it's true. When you compare yourself to someone else, there's so many variables and so many different situations that could have got them into where they are versus where you are. So the only person that you can compare yourself to is yourself. And again, I think the yesterday part is something that gets lost. I think we can compare ourselves against ourselves. And sometimes we can look back to a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, when we lost that weight and we were lean and we were stronger than we are now. And we start thinking, oh, I used to be the one, and now it's not so good. But really, it's you yesterday is the one that you should compare yourself to, because that's the only one you can have an effect on. Number 5 is do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. If your kid's behaving badly, don't make excuses for their behavior. If you don't like something that your kid does, imagine what other people are going to think. So by doing this, you create a well-mannered and a respectful young adult and then adult. This one is one that's not necessarily major in my life at the moment, as I don't have kids, but one day it will be impactful. And for you who have kids out there, it's something to bear in mind as well. Number 6 is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. So a lot of the time, and it's quite common now as well, people like to blame the world for their problems. They like to point out all the flaws in the world that have brought them to where they are now. But if they just took a step back and looked at where they are in their own lives, they might realize that their life is not exactly where they want it to be. And by working on their own life, they may then work towards improving the world as a whole. Next, we have pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Expedience is following your impulses. It's satisfying the short term. So it's those behaviors which don't really have a long-term benefit, but we do them for the short-term results. If you find your meaning and you work towards that meaning, then you are going to get the results in the long term. And that's a difficult thing to do because you have to resist the urge to give in to expedience. Next, we have tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Now, telling the truth is so important, both to other people, but also to us. If you're honest, then you know who you are, other people know who you are. even if it's a difficult thing to say, sometimes we back out of things and we won't be honest because it might upset someone or it might be difficult for us to say. But by doing it, in the long run, they're going to appreciate that you did that. And on the other side, by lying, however small that lie is, it can roll on to bigger and bigger lies, or it can compound and that lie becomes something else because you've got to stick with it. So just think about that. Tell the truth. Next, we have assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. This one, I think, in the modern world, we're all connected and we all have an opinion. And a lot of the time, people end up in their little gangs or their divides. And I mean, essentially, that's what the media does, is divides people. So people choose their viewpoint and they defend it without even listening to the other side. And I think it's really important that we do listen to each other, even if someone has a differing viewpoint from you. If you don't listen to that and take it in and really listen, that means you're listening to understand. You're not listening and whilst they're talking, thinking about, oh, I'm going to disprove this by saying this and they're going to look stupid. That's not listening. So just listen to people and maybe you'll learn something that they do know. Number 10, we have be precise in your speech. So it's quite a straightforward one. If you are precise with your speech, others know what you're saying, others understand what you mean, and so do you. It's pretty straightforward. Number 11 is do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And that one comes again from over protecting children. A lot of the time, parents will protect children. They'll shield them from everything with a hint of danger. And in this example, it's skateboarding. By doing this, we raise kids who are weak and not really ready for the world, and it can have a lot of impacts on those kids as they grow up. By letting kids understand the boundaries and learning when they fall, what's painful, what the limit of that danger is, obviously within reason, then they learn and adapt and become a lot more understanding of the world around them. Lastly, rule 12 is pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. This one's all about enjoying the small things. And I think, again, it's a really relevant one in modern day life. It's a fast paced world. We're always connected. We've always got someone else to chat to on your phone, emails, texts, everything flying in, notifications. Pet a cat. If you see a cat on the street, give it a stroke. Just have a few seconds, just enjoying the things that make you smile. Maybe it's not petting a cat. It's not for everyone. Some of us are allergic, but find something that makes you happy, makes you smile, makes you feel good. Whether that's just having a conversation with someone, a light-hearted conversation, crack a joke with someone. And yeah, it can just be very simple. So that's a roundup of book number 1. There was quite a long insight into that book, but that's because that book really did have a very big impact on me, and it still does, and Jordan Peterson does as well. I think his work is very good. I don't agree with all of his stuff necessarily, but definitely the stuff around finding your purpose and becoming a better person, I think, is really, really valuable. Book 2 out of the 5 is one that I mentioned in episode 11, where I spoke about some of the books that I read at the start of this journey as well. And that was Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. This book is amazing. It's a short book, so it's only about 200 pages, and the first 100 pages are recounting his experience of 3 years in the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. So he was there for about 3 years in total. And the insights that he gives, the way he talks about his time in the camps is fascinating. It's so raw and not trying to cover anything up, but it's also very logical and very thought through the way he talks. The second half of the book, the second 100 pages, is all about his psychotherapy that he then went on to do afterwards. So it's called logotherapy. The idea of logotherapy is that it holds that finding meaning in life is a primary motivational force for individuals. It emphasizes that life can have a purpose, even in the face of suffering, and that individuals can find meaning through their attitudes, choices, and actions. And this is shown in this book. So again, it's a quote I've quoted before, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and it's just fascinating. So the quote is, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And that he wrote whilst he's in a concentration camp, and it's 3 years of being in those camps, not knowing if he's going to be alive the next day to eat his soup and bread. And the idea that he can come up with something like that and still in his mind be strong and understand that he still has a choice to determine how he views, how he frames that scenario, is just so amazing. And I think, again, in this modern day, in comparison, most of our lives are very easy. And it's just a nice reminder that you have the choice to frame it in any way you want. You have the choice to decide how you look at that scenario. And that scenario may not be good. It may be awful, but you still have that choice. That cannot be taken away from you. Book number 3 is by Ryan Holiday. This is The Daily Stoic. I spoke in episode 11 again about a different one of Ryan Holiday's books, and that one was The Obstacle is the Way, which is a very good book as well. Stoicism is really interesting. It's something that I've, again, started to implement and try to get a lot out of it and try and really bring it into my life. I think it can be butchered sometimes online, and I think some people go too far with it, where it's this whole not having any emotions to anything, when really it's feeling those emotions, understanding what that emotion is, and then responding appropriately. It's making a decision. Stoicism is about looking at what you have control over in your life, what you do have control over, and what you don't have control over. Don't worry about the things that you can't control. Worry about what you can control. And by doing so, you can change those things in order to make the things that you can't control different. The way I look at this, and an example in my own life, is my road rage, or my previous road rage. I'd say 5 to 6 years ago, when I was driving, anyone who cut me up, anyone who did something that was just a little bit out of line, I'd be fuming. I'd be in my car shouting. Obviously they couldn't hear me. Rarely would I go out the window, but I did as well, and I look back on that and cringe. But yeah, now I'm very, very calm, I would say. If someone does that, I acknowledge it, and then it's gone, and I just carry on. And I've heard about this as well before, because if you're driving and something happens and you react angrily and you get it into your mind and you keep thinking about it, that thought's in your mind for the rest of the drive, or at the very least for the next 5-10 minutes. That means you're not focusing on driving. You're focusing on what happened 5-10 minutes ago. So it's dangerous as well. That's the thing. As soon as you let it go, within 10 seconds, it's out of your mind. You've forgotten about it. There's a new road, there's a new turning. You've moved on. So it's a really nice way to look at that. And I think it's improved me massively in that way, as just one example. This book, though, The Daily Stoic, it's a really easy way to introduce Stoicism into your life. So the way it works is it's 365 days of Stoicism. Each day you get a daily quote from one of the great Stoics of history, and you get a brief explanation about what it means and how you can implement that in your life from Ryan Holiday. It allows you to read one page in the morning and then take what you've learned in that page out into your day, trying to think about it and implement it in your day-to-day life. It allows you to stop getting overwhelmed. Sometimes you can read these sort of books and have 10 amazing insights in really short periods of time, and you forget most of them. With this one, you get one a day. It's about a page a day of writing. So it's very quick and easy to read. You can think about it, reflect on it through the day, and move forward with it. Really recommend it. You can read it obviously alongside any other book because it's just one page a day. Number 4 is David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. So this is David Goggins' first book, and I would say this one really sparked the beginning of my fitness challenges, my fitness pursuits, and just pushing myself to new levels that I hadn't done before. So at the time, I'd recently got into running, I suppose, a year before. And I was running 5Ks just for time, and I'd got it down to around 21 minutes, which I was happy with. But I didn't really know where I was going next. I didn't have any plans. In the book, David talks about his journey from obese to a US Navy SEAL and all of the ultra marathons that he's then run. David had to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months. He had 3 months to do that in order to join the US Navy, and he did it. He put his mind to it, he worked real hard, and he got there, and the rest is history. He went on to run ultramarathons all over the world, but during his first, he had to qualify for, I think it was Badwater 135, and in doing so, he had to have run 100 miles previously. So he signed up to this 100-mile race with no training, and it was a 24-hour just a circuit. So it's just constant loops, and you just ran for as long as you needed to. So he ran 100 miles in under 19 hours that day, without any real training for it, and that's pretty phenomenal. Needless to say, without the training, it did take its toll on his body. He had kidney failure during this run. He had broken feet, so he was in a pretty bad way, but he kept going, and reading about that is just phenomenal. When I finished this book, I remember closing the book, picking up my phone, and then booking a marathon, all within about 5 minutes of finishing the book. It was something about the book, and I can't explain what, but it made me want to just sign up to something crazy, test my ability, test my mental strength as well as my physical strength. And that was a marathon. And at the time, like I said, I was doing 5Ks. That's a big jump. So I did that, and it's only gone on from there. Once the marathon was done, it went on to other things. So my partner as well, at the time, she got into that. She started to watch some David Goggins videos, read about the book as well. And because we were doing that at a similar time, she got the same bug, if you like, and we started going and doing these challenges. So she was finding these challenges coming to me. I was just saying yes, and then worrying about them later. It was, I probably should have thought them through a bit more, but they were awesome. So we did a 24-hour walk on the treadmill. So that was 24 hours non-stop, besides toilet breaks. But that was just on a treadmill in our gym, and that was a real mental battle. It was a physical battle as well, but the mental aspect of that one, because you're in the same space on the same treadmill all day, all night, that one really, really tested us. She then came to me and said, I've got this other one. It's a 100-kilometer walk. It's called Trail Walker, and it's for the Gurkha Welfare Trust. It's a 100-kilometer walk along the South Downs Way in the UK, which is from around Portsmouth area to Brighton. and that was phenomenal. Again, I think with stops added on, it took us 26 hours. We had quite a few injuries on the way, but again, that David Goggins element and that mindset really came through, and it was phenomenal to see her push through her own injuries in that event to get to the finish. There will be more challenges coming, and I'm looking forward to the next ones next year. So yeah, this book is incredible, and there's just something about it that makes you want to sign up to something crazy. So give it a read and let us know what you've signed up to. The fifth and final book of this list is one that I wasn't sure whether it would make my top 5, but I think purely because of the practical takeaways that I've used from it, it has to. That is Ant Middleton's book, The Fear Bubble. So I think it was his second book. And it intertwines his trek up Everest, where it was close to going wrong, or you could say it went wrong a number of times. And that alone is a really interesting story to listen to. But it also intertwines it with the idea of the fear bubble. This is the idea, and he uses the example of when he was in the SAS, if you were going to break into a compound and into a building, obviously there's a lot of fear in that. But when you're fearful the whole time, it's tiring. You're not working to the best of your ability. It can be really difficult. So the way he looks at it is by breaking it down. So he has these little bubbles, which is the only time he's allowed to feel the fear. So if he was coming up to a door and he was going to go into the building as the point man, he wouldn't let himself get fearful as he approached the door, because he's not in trouble at that point. The dangerous part is when the door opens. So he envisages a bubble around the door. As he gets to the door, he's in the bubble. He's allowed to feel that fear. As he pushes the door open and enters the room, the bubble bursts, he gets the reward of the adrenaline, and he can move through, and then the fear goes again. I liked the practical way of looking at it, and I think the reason it sticks out to me as such a beneficial book is I was reading it when I first learned to snowboard. So anyone who's snowboarded or skied, when you first do that, especially if you're learning as an adult, it can be scary because you don't know how to stop. You don't know if you fall over. You've heard all these horror stories of people breaking whatever, and it can be scary. So I was looking at it as, okay, I'll take this and I won't be scared. So if you're getting on and off a chairlift, that could be scary. So as you walk towards the chairlift, you're not scared because you're on the floor. Nothing can go wrong at that point. You're just standing on the floor. As soon as you're about to get on the chairlift, that's the scary part. So you're in the bubble. The chairlift comes round, it picks you up, you leave, you'll burst the bubble. You're now on the chairlift. You've succeeded. It's another bit of evidence that you can do the thing and that there was no reason to be fearful. Same at the other end. As you get off the chairlift, that's your bubble. You're then sat at the top of the piste. Again, you're sat at the top, you're not moving, you're safe. Hopefully you followed along and slightly understood what I'm saying, but that's the way I looked at it in that moment when I was learning about it. And I've used it in a lot of other situations since. So just trying to get on top of that fear, because again, when you're in that fear constantly, it does not help you. So those are my 5 books that have had the biggest impact on me in my life to date. That's 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and The Fear Bubble by Ant Middleton. Now, I've put in a couple of notable mentions at the end just because they were really, really good books, and again, would recommend that you read them. The first one is George Orwell's 1984, and this is the first fiction book that I've mentioned, and I suppose that's sort of what you would expect. You'd expect that the non-fiction books would be the ones that you really learn stuff from. But I do think this book has its place, and anyone who's read it will understand this. It's such an amazing book, and I was hooked when I was reading it. It seems ever relevant and like way ahead of its time, but just the idea of being watched everywhere. And this is the sort of world we're living in. People use these terms. You've got Big Brother watching you. The thought police are out to get you, policing what you think and what you say. And it is incredible when you think about it that he wrote this so long ago and it's still so relevant. And I think that's probably the thing that stuck out to me and what sticks out to a lot of people about it. The other one is Anne Frank's diary. So the diary of a young girl. When Anne started writing her diary at age 13, while she wrote well for a 13-year-old, you could tell she was young the way she wrote. But by the time she died at age 15, she was writing so well and it was so insightful and it was better than most adults can write. It's just phenomenal. And reading through her diary, the way she speaks about her situation and the scenarios is just so matter of fact, and there's no real insight about how scared you really would be. And yeah, it's a testament to her character, and everything that she went through was obviously awful, but she still managed to keep writing this book, and that was her constant. That was the thing in her life that she did all the time. So that brings us to the end of the episode. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. Any books that I've missed that you would recommend that I read? And lastly, again, just from me, I hope you're enjoying the show as much as I'm enjoying making it. If you do have feedback for me, you can comment on my socials, send me DMs. You can also text me from the descriptions of the shows, and that should come straight through to me. Otherwise, thank you again. And you can follow us on Instagram at Lonely Chapter Podcast and on X at Lonely_Chapter. And lastly from me, thank you for listening.